This is not the first time that Peter has met Jesus. Just a few verses earlier in the Gospel, Luke tells us that after leaving the synagogue, Jesus entered Simon Peter's house, and he healed Simon Peter's mother-in-law. So on this day, when there is hardly any room left on the beach, Jesus asks Simon if he can borrow the boat to teach. Simon is like us. He's met Jesus. He knows something about Jesus. In fact, he's even had Jesus as a guest in his house. We've been hanging around Jesus too. We've heard the stories. Like Paul, we have heard the witness that he died for our sins in accordance with the Scriptures, that he was buried and raised again on the third day. But then Paul goes on to say, last of all, as to someone untimely born, he appeared also to me. Because Paul, like us, had never met Jesus in the flesh. Jesus says to Peter, "Put out into deep water." Peter had worked all night long, but had caught nothing. What's the point of doing this again? But Peter was not prepared for what happened next. It was so overwhelming that it literally knocked him over. "Go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." But Jesus had no intention of going away. This is why he came, to invite us to go deeper, to allow the experience of God to so inundate our lives that we begin to recognize that God's presence completely surrounds us. Did you notice that Jesus didn't ask Simon to follow him as a disciple? He just assumes it's going to happen. The pattern in today's gospel is really the pattern for us as well. On our own, we can work hard, but not really accomplish all that much. Any encounter with Christ will always draw us deeper, and our lives will no longer be the same. We find ourselves drawn together with others who are in the same boat, and together we go out to share this good news, to fish for others. An early symbol for the church was a boat with the cross as a mast. This image suggests a church on mission. In fact, even church buildings reflect this image. The long, narrow section of the Gothic churches where the assembly sits is called the nave. It's the same word we have for navy. So this mission plan of the church is part of the movement in our own archdiocese to unleash the gospel, calling all of us to be a joyful band of missionary disciples sharing the good news of the gospel. Every encounter with Christ through prayer and the sacraments draws us deeper into the spiritual life. And then we realize that we cannot be Christian alone. Jesus' call to love God and neighbor draws us together into a community of church. Love binds us together and sends us out. After the Archdiocesan Synod in 2016, Archbishop Alan Vigneron published his pastoral letter called Unleash the Gospel. And just a few weeks ago, the Archbishop called all the priests of the diocese together to lay out his plan to reimagine every parish community as a mission community, to go out, to focus more on going out rather than maintenance within the parish. And the Archbishop is planning a kind of a multi-year effort to reorganize parishes in this new model, beginning this summer. So I can tell you that while we'll continue to implement aspects of the Unleash the Gospel program, I don't see my role in my final year as pastor to begin any new initiatives. So my goal now is to strengthen the programs that are in place, and I'm actually working pretty hard to document and share as much of the community knowledge that I have so that the community will be prepared to welcome a new pastor in July of 2020. I can tell you that I don't have any direct influence in picking the next pastor. The assignment board begins meeting in March every year, so just about a year from now, I would expect some calls from priests who might be interested in coming to Christ the Redeemer. A new pastor would be named in March or April of next year, which would give us a few months to get to know him, introduce him to the staff, and to the various ministries of our parish. One of the ministries that has been especially important to us is Stephen Ministry. It's a one-on-one Christian caregiving ministry. We started Stephen Ministry in my second year as pastor. We've had several very dedicated Stephen Ministry leadership teams over the years. And last year, I was really delighted when one of our staff members, Karen Sweetlick, expressed interest in taking over the Stephen Ministry leadership. So Karen Sweetlick and parishioner Margot Clairfelt have both completed the training and are already training a new class of Stephen ministers who will be commissioned next month. I think having a staff member as leader will be an excellent way to transition this ministry with a new pastor. As you know, last Easter Sunday we retired the parish building debt. And last year in my State of the Parish address, I announced our goal to establish a $250,000 savings fund to cover the anticipated costs of building repairs, many of which had been postponed until we were out of debt. There's a very complete 6-month financial statement in today's bulletin, written by the Parish Finance Council. While our income has been adequate to maintain our ministries, we are falling short of our goal to fund the maintenance account. One of our concerns is the flat roof sections of the building of kind of reaching the end of their natural life. Both our Sunday collections and our CSA fund are below our budgeted projections. It's kind of hard to know exactly why this is happening. I suspect that in some way, because we paid off the building debt, some people might be using their gift contributions to fund other charities. I also think that the sexual abuse crisis has had an impact on the church. I know that some people have cut back their contributions as a result of that. At any rate, the staff is working very hard to keep our spending within these lower budget projections. The first spring that we were in the new church on Trinity Sunday, I wanted to preach on the 3 windows that are here in the church, the earth, fire, and water window. And I wanted to use a reflection from the Jesuit priest Teilhard de Chardin, who was a paleontologist. He has this wonderful quote on fire. But I discovered another insight of Teilhard when I was researching for the earth window. And once Teilhard de Chardin was up in Asia Minor on a mountaintop, and he had no bread and wine to offer Mass. And so he realized that the Eucharistic presence of Christ transcended all material things. And so he imagined that the earth itself and the work of human hands could be the bread and wine of the Mass. So it was kind of that image that gave me the idea for the window in the Tabernacle Chapel, that we are sent out from the Mass to go out into the world and to make the world sacred. This reflects the priestly work in John's Gospel, chapter 17, when he sends the disciples out, that through their witness, people will come to know Jesus. So when we were building the church, I had the idea to paint the Orion star constellation in the ceiling of the Eucharistic Chapel. And so Elizabeth Devereaux, the stained glass artist, used that idea of the stars in the heavens above and then balanced that with the waters below from the book of Genesis. You can see in the image in the Tabernacle Chapel of the North American continent and the South American continent. In the northern part, in the air, you see birds flying to create the landmass. And in the lower part, the South American continent, she used an etching of fish swimming in the waters. Well, only the 3 lower panels of the windows were completed. And there were 3 panels at the top that were just been left blank. Well, after Joe McCarthy died this past fall, Jan wanted to complete the window as a gift to the parish in memory of Joe. And the new glass was just installed this week. You can see here the center window. This is from the Eucharistic Chapel side. It's kind of like a Milky Way. This is from the Daily Mass Chapel. You see the stars etched above. This crescent moon is really quite beautiful. It's a beveled glass that's then fused onto the glass, and there's like a little cloud etching around it. It looked an awful lot like the moon was out last night. And then this is the completed window from the tabernacle side, and here it is from the Daily Mass Chapel. You can check it out after Mass. It's really quite beautiful. Thank you, Jan, for that gift. Lastly, I want to draw your attention to a few things. You know, the groundhog, I don't know if you saw his shadow or not, but the groundhog always has an announcement about winter is 6 more weeks, which is how long Lent is. So he's always announcing Lent comes next. So I want to remind you that Lent is coming. And this year for Lent, we have a 4-week Lenten series, Seasons of Life, Seasons of Faith. And we've invited Dr. Patricia Cooney Hathaway. She's been here before. I can remember at the old church we had her for a Lenten program, so it'd be a delight to welcome her back. It'll be on Thursday nights. There's more details in the bulletin, and there's no reservations necessary. We're planning a new parish pictorial directory. This directory will start shooting family pictures in May. What's interesting about this new project is there will be a printed directory, but more interesting is there'll be an app from the company, and the app then can be updated so we can have more of a dynamic directory going forward. Which also reminds me about the We Connect Parish app that we launched last fall. If you haven't downloaded it yet, there's instructions on the webpage how to do that. We're hoping that we can, as we learn more about this app, we'd like to be able to use it as a way to communicate. It has a messaging feature, so we can send out news, especially like when schools are closed and programs are canceled. It's a great way to keep that communication going. And finally, I've decided to lead another pilgrimage to Israel. It's going to be October 21st to the 31st of this year. The trip will begin, as we did the last time in 2017, we're going to fly to Amman, Jordan, and go to Petra, and then we'll go into Israel and Galilee, and back on the 31st. There are brochures in the vestibule.